In this video, I'm going to introduce the concepts of app parts and web parts and how to add them to your page. Now to do that, you need to open your page in edit mode, as I've done here, and click on the Insert tab. I've talked about these other objects before, but app parts and web parts definitely deserve their own video. Now, an app part and web part are quite similar, but basically what they are reusable modules that you can add to your page. Now, the main difference between the two are that app parts, if you click on this, you can see that this is essentially, there's one app part per item in your site contents gallery. So this is an app part for my documents library. I have an app part for my site assets, etc. If I added more apps to my site, I would have additional app parts available to me. And we'll get into adding apps in a later video. If I click on a web parts, I see I have my apps available to me. App parts and web parts are very similar, so the apps are available to you. It can be a bit confusing. But you'll see these additional folders here that have groups of web parts. Now, web parts are special because they're not attached specifically to an app. They're reusable all over your site, and they exist solely on that page. They don't have any attachment to anything in your site assets gallery or your site contents gallery. So, for example, a good example of a web part is a content rollup web part. If I look in RSS viewer, for example, this will allow me to display an RSS feed on my web page. I can put in the URL of the RSS feed, and that feed will be displayed on that page. This has absolutely nothing to do with anything else anywhere on my site. It's a standalone piece of functionality. Now, when I add the web part, I press Add here, and every web part is unique and will have its own way of configuring it. So I'll just go over some of the very, very basics. So you add the web part here. It tells you the title of that web part. And this particular web part, in order to display anything, requires me to configure the RSS feed. Now it gives me a link to open the tool pane, but some web parts aren't that friendly. And what you need to do is click on this drop down menu right here and edit the web part. Now, once you're editing the web part, you can configure it, and there's a whole range of things that you can configure here, and I'll get into that in a later video. I'll cancel out of this for now, and I'll just show you very quickly that when I click on this drop-down arrow, I also have the ability to minimize the web part, which basically means that the web part will still exist on the page, but it will be hidden from the user when they view the page. I can delete the web part, which again, because it exists just on the page, I'm not removing it completely from my site. I'm just removing this instance of this web part from my page. And any settings that I have configured on this web part will be lost. I can also export the web part. I'll get to this in a later video, but this basically means if I want to configure my web part and put all sorts of settings and make it unique, I can save those settings, export it, and that could be reused other places on my site or in the site collection, and it will already be preset and pre-configured, so people wouldn't have to configure it for themselves. App parts have all of um, these same options. They're very similar to web parts, and you'll be able to modify them in very much the same way.